to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today are life coaches Cindy Chavez and Jackie Gates. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And I'm particularly happy we have a new intro. I finally got it done. How about that? This is great.
Yay! It really worked, Jackie. All the talking about putting things off and getting things.
And I suddenly have you guys full screen too. All of a sudden. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I just went out and came back in again as usual, and then I hit on the big screen, and here I am. So full screen. Yeah.
All right.
Full screen, name and lights. Oh my Lord, I'm really rocking it today.
Well, it's like we said before the show, you are always supposed to be in lights. That's been your entire career. So it's,
this
it had to be, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So this is fulfilling destiny. That's what this is doing.
Indeed. Yes.
So anyway, we're going to have a little fun today. Anyone who's tuning into the live stream, if you have questions that you'd like to bring in for life coaches, because we got two great life coaches here to answer, that would be wonderful. But in the meantime, I'm going to first I'm going to start with an intro or a promo or two, and then I'm going to bring in a topic, assuming we don't get questions from live stream audience, because you can never really be sure what's going to happen there. But I'm going to bring in a topic that I was telling Cindy before the show, I've been thinking about this for like the last 48 hours or so. Okay. Kind of inspired by what I've been doing in the Taya boot camp. But basically what I've been doing, I've been piecing together in my mind the various ways that we create problems for ourselves and then we try to fix them. and then I want to kind of get your input on them. And it's sort of quasi humorous. It's also got kind of a rather sick side to it in terms of the way the scenario keeps playing out, because the scenario always ends in everybody dying, but it gets kind of silly after a while. So we'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, first and foremost, I've been telling everybody I am in the process now of adding a second co-host for both the Monday and the Tuesday shows. I have had a couple of people from the live stream, from the from the podcast audience, who have expressed some interest. One of them actually is going to be coming on to the Tuesday show to do kind of a check it out, see how it works kind of thing in a couple of weeks. So that's good. We have a second one that I've been kind of playing a little phone tag with. We're seeing where that's going to go. But that doesn't mean that all the slots are filled. So if there are any listeners who have not heard this message before now, who have always thought about, gee, it'd be kind of fun to be on the show as a co-host, this is your chance. So reach out to me. You can send an email to me, walt@loatoday.net. You can use the LOA Today app to send me a message. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can send me a carrier pigeon. It doesn't really matter how you get it to me. Just reach out.
Hogwarts owls, yes. I'll just beam the messages to you.
That's good. I'm actually learning that, and I'm getting there.
I have a suggestion for you already. So actually, Cindy and I have been thinking about it. So yes, we have somebody we'd like to offer.
Well, hey, yes. We can handle that. Yeah. That's a good thing. So absolutely, yeah. So send in a note if you're interested in talking about it further. I have to tell you, the woman who is a listener who's going to be joining us in a couple of weeks on Tuesday, it was an interesting phone conversation I had with her. And I won't go into all the details of it, but the bottom line was she was so excited to be speaking to me because she's been listening to me all these years.
Wow.
And I was thinking about that. And I was realizing, well, that's probably true, because, we got, 600 or so listeners who listen to every episode. So, yeah, of course, that's going to go on. But I never thought of myself as a personality. I just never thought of myself that way. I'm a guy who goes onto a podcast, talks to my friends, and then it gets recorded and sent someplace, and other people get to listen. That's what it is from my perspective.
You know that Oprah says the same thing. I just sit on a couch and talk to people.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there you go. You're on the right track.
Okay. So,
Walt, it's funny thinking about, I know you've done the podcast. You started it way before the two of us knew each other. Mm-hmm. But when I first started doing the podcast with you, and I know it had already gone through a lot of different iterations, but we were doing 3 shows a week.
Yeah.
For me, it was like get up at 5 a.m. shows, because we were doing morning shows for rush hour traffic.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And it's like there were just a little handful of co-hosts, and it's just grown and grown, and it's like awesome to watch how it's changed and grown since then, right?
And then to realize that we really are touching people's lives in an important way, because That's what she was. I mean, what's the subtitle of the show? Your Daily Dose of Happy. Well, that's exactly what she looks for from it. That's what she was telling me. She says she gets excited about how it just lifts her right up every time. I'm thinking, wow, mission accomplished.
Well, it lifts us up every time. Like when we get finished, we're always like,
oh yeah, we're buzzing.
Yeah,
we're really buzzing. So yeah, it's good. So I guess that's just my way of expressing appreciation to everybody who's listening. Like, thank you. This is really great.
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to talking to people.
We haven't done that in a while. Not that we haven't been grateful, but we haven't talked about it a lot. But we are very grateful for all the people that listen and send us nice messages and let us know that their lives are better because of listening and all of that. That's the whole reason, right, that we're here. And so that's super great when we get a shout out from you on social media, or when you get a private email, or when you go through the app and send us a message. It's so nice to get those little reminders that, that you're enjoying it. And when you join the live stream and ask questions and have a conversation with us, that's even better.
That is. We definitely love that part. So yeah, by all means, if you can do that. I mean, I know with the way life is these days, it's almost impossible for most people to say, well, I can be there at a particular time. But if you can, it's really great. So, feel free to drop right in. Something else that I wanted to talk about too, and this kind of ties into where I was going to go with a topic for today. But I want to talk about how when we're doing these shows, it's also affecting us. Because I'll speak for myself. It was the main reason why I started the podcast in the first place. I felt like I didn't know much about law of attraction. I didn't understand why it wasn't working in my life. I certainly didn't feel qualified to teach it to anybody else. So I figured I'll just bring on a bunch of experts and they can teach it to me. And I'll do a podcast about that.
Smart. Really smart.
And that's what it turned into. And I kept bringing in all these people who were coaches and experts and people had written books and, they had created amazing businesses and all this kind of stuff. And it just kept evolving and evolving. And I kept getting smarter and smarter, listening to all these smart people every single week. Oh my goodness, this is great.
The average is the 5 people you surround yourself with, and they don't have to be in the room.
That's true. And I learned that really early on.
Yeah. That's so true.
In fact, as I think about it right now, I hadn't thought about it in these terms. I created my own mastermind.
You did indeed. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they don't have to be in the room. They just have to be in your ears. And
that's all they were at first. There wasn't even video the first 4 or 5 years, something like that.
We started doing video this year, right?
Yeah, video is really relatively new for us, but the audio is all about, for the longest time, it was a phone call.
Wow.
In the earliest days, it was a phone call. Yeah.
Very cool.
And I got a message fairly recently from one of the people that works in the radio station that carries us, and said, I just wanted to let you know that I still love listening to you so much. And it was like so nice, right?
It is.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Rave reviews are always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's such a lift. And by the way, there are times when I've needed that lift. To see that comment or see that email, like, oh boy, that came in at exactly the right time, because I was just down the spiral and I wasn't feeling very good, and that helped me lift me up. So again, it works both directions.
Why you need a file of fabulousness.
Yes, and you're an expert on that for sure. The file of fabulousness.
That podcast title. It was like Jackie's file of fabulousness. It was like
it makes all the, because we're human. We're going to have wobbly days. We need to have those nice things that people said about us.
And they always talk about when people write a letter, whether it's a letter of praise or a letter of complaint. As a business owner, when you get one, especially on a letter of someone being unhappy about something, then they say that if there's one letter, then there's, 10 other people that feel the same way or whatever, and they just don't write the letter. And so many times I've convinced myself to go ahead and send the email when I've had a thought about something that touched me. And then I think, well, and I don't do anything about it, but that person might have 100 people out there thinking that it was really great, but none of them write an email or reach out or say anything. So we don't know it unless you say something. And I've tried to adopt that in my own life. Like when I appreciate someone, to say it, because I noticed for the longest time, like I would be appreciating something. Like as simple as, okay, like today, Jackie looks fabulous today, and I just love the outfit that she has on, but I wouldn't say anything. I think it to myself. I think, gosh, Jackie's necklace is gorgeous, but I would never say it, right? And so I started prompting myself to compliment people when it's in my head. And there's no decision that I make not to say it. It's just I just don't, and I don't think about it till later. And I think, why didn't I say something? And so, giving compliments and receiving compliments is a really easy way to flex your receiving muscles as well as your
appreciation
muscles, right?
Yeah,
right.
Because where your attention goes, energy flows, and you'll get more of things to appreciate, more people who compliment you or whatever it is, and it's like Walt says, when you need it most, it'll show up because that's how things work. So,
exactly.
Absolutely. It's
Which I find to be reassuring, by the way.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, thank goodness.
The show has been a vibe lifter for us forever.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned that I had this little scenario I wanted to go through, and it's kind of like, what in music you have a round and you just keep doing the thing over and over again. Well, this is going to be the same kind of thing. It's going to be kind of like a story in the round. All right.
Okay.
And it's more like a metaphorical story than anything else. Okay. And I'm kind of drawing from the Abraham Hicks story about paddling upstream versus paddling downstream, but I'm changing the metaphor around. It's not the same metaphor.
Okay.
This is a metaphor of what happens when you ride down the stream of what you don't like and don't want. Which is the way, that's the stream most people, actually for many people, it's a raging river. But
is that riding down a stream or is that upstream?
Well, in the Abraham Hicks model, it's upstream. But in the metaphor I'm telling, it's a downstream one, and you'll see why in a moment.
Because we get caught up in it, right? Okay.
Well, not only do we get caught up in it, but it ends up going over a cliff into a waterfall that goes down and breaks up on the rocks. So you can kind of see how the whole metaphor is going to go. But the reason it's in kind of a round form is that I'm going to give us a series of ways that we kind of play out that scene, so to speak, that are very typical of the way people in general do it, as well as people within LOA circles and so on and so forth, to kind of illustrate all the different ways that people deal with all these negative flows that they're in. And then I just want to get your comments on them. Okay. So first one I'm going to draw on is like, I'll call this one like the generic society-wide way that people ride down their downstream of what they don't want and don't like. They're riding in this canoe. There are two people in the canoe, and they're going down this stream, and it's a stream of all this stuff that they don't like and don't want. And the stream is going faster and faster and faster, and they realize that they're coming up on a waterfall, and they start to panic. And oh my God, the waterfall is coming! What the frig is going on? We're gonna go over. We're gonna die! And they go over the top of the waterfall. They crash on the rocks down below, and they die. Okay, so they're reincarnated, and they come back again. And they're on the water again. And this time they're on the water, and it's on the same water of all this stuff that they don't like and don't want. And they're flowing down this river. I have this memory that I went through this before. This is a past life experience. I'm reliving it right now. And I'm floating down the river, and they're talking to each other in the canoe. Like, what did we do last time? Well, we died last time. Oh my God, we're going to die. And we go over the cliff and we die. We hit the rocks at the bottom. So we come back another time. This time we're riding down the river, but there's a canoe in front of us. And in the canoe in front of us, we see the canoe rise above the water. And it's just floating above the waterfall. And we're saying, we're saved. Somebody has figured this out. Our Savior has come to teach us and how to be better people so we won't get killed going over the waterfall. And the people in the canoe who are floating over the waterfall are looking at us, and we're looking at them. We're saying, please, Master, save us. And as we go over the waterfall, wait, Master, I will do anything you want. I will pray to you. Ah! And we crash and fall on the rocks and die. So we come back a fourth time. And this time we're riding down the water. And we're saying to ourselves, well, I have this memory that I went through this before, and I tried to get saved, but saving didn't help me. I'm going to think positive thoughts. Okay, so here I am. I'm riding down the river, and I'm thinking my positive thoughts, and oh my God, I'm going over the edge, and then crashes on the rocks again. And so we keep coming back over and over again, trying to these different ways. How can we avoid going over the waterfall? How can we end up crashing on the rocks below? And then finally, one time, we come back. This is like lifetime number 76, right? And we've been through this a few times, like, okay, yeah, we know what's happening here. Like, okay, this is an old story. I recognize this one. So we're talking to each other in the canoe, you know, the two people who are in the canoe. Well, what are we going to do this time? Well, just screw it. We know what's going to happen. Let's just enjoy where we are right now. Okay, so we're riding on the water, and you know, it's nice water actually, and what a beautiful shoreline that is. And you know, they're just talking about all the stuff they're liking about the trip, and all of a sudden they find themselves floating above the waterfall. And then there's a canoe coming up behind them saying, "We're safe."
I love that.
So
that is very good.
You could play that out a lot of different ways, but it really illustrates a few things. First of all, it illustrates how when we are focused on all the stuff that we don't like, obviously we keep running into the same situation over and over and over again. We can end up having the same kind of result over and over and over again. We try different things. We try to grow in different ways. We aren't really sure what we're doing. Kind of illustrative of how I got my own law of attraction understanding going. And we pick up things along the way. We try them out and so forth. And all of a sudden something works. And we say, what just happened? And we aren't sure what to make out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the next time we go, it's like we go over the waterfall again because we didn't believe what happened the first time. And I guess the reason I'm bringing that up with you guys is you're life coaches. You deal with people who are riding down that downstream. That's a really nasty downstream all the time. You're trying to help them, teach them how to float above the waterfall or some equivalent, some way to change the path, you know, paddle upstream, whatever, do something different to shift that perspective.
I think,
go ahead, Jen.
Go ahead. I think that actually what coaches do is not so much teach you how to do the noticing and stuff, but they mirror all the things you actually know, but you've forgotten every time you went over the waterfall. Mm-hmm. And so I think we mirror so that you can see what you already know. And you start being able to go, well, last time I did this thing where I was really appreciating the canoe and everything, so I'm going to do that again. And the time before that, I decided not to stress about it, so I'm going to try that again. And a good coach will be able to say, you see how you thought this and that happened, but the time you thought this happened? Well, let's lean on the one that is bringing you the result and experience you want. For me, coaching is very much a case of mirroring, being able to show you. You can't read the code when you're in the program. You can't read the label when you're in the jar. So that's why coaches help you see. They give you a different perspective so that you can see the things you were doing right and do more of those.
That's good.
When you were telling that story, I was thinking about two things. One of them, there's a very famous Buddhist nun named Pema Chodron who says a thing never goes away until you learn what it's there to teach you. Right? And as Jackie will know this too, as coaches, we see a lot of patterns. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me once, what's the thing that nobody knows really that you don't talk about, but that you're really good at, like a superpower? And I said, pattern recognition. I see patterns in people's behavior really, really easily. They show up really brightly for me. And I think I've been thinking a lot about, because one of my favorite movie genres is time travel, books and movies. I love books and movies about time travel. And we watched a movie, it might have even been called Time Loop, but it was about a time loop. And often time loops are there. And the simplest one that everybody's probably seen is Groundhog Day. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. Where the guy lives the same exact day over and over and over, wakes up every day, it's the same song on the radio alarm, and it goes through. But what happens as he goes through that same day is he goes through different phases of how he's going to deal with each thing. Like suddenly he knows where the water puddle is and he doesn't trip in the puddle anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it's like, well, I know I'm not going to take all of this too seriously. I'm going to go steal a car and go for a joyride because who cares? You know, I'm going to do it all tomorrow. So sometimes, you know, I think Jackie brought this up last week, or one of us brought it up about when we feel like we're in a pattern or we're in a time loop, like, oh my God, I've just come right back around again. I'm right at square one again. I've just gone through the whole thing. I can look back and see I've been through this so many times before. But the truth is, it's not a circle, it's a spiral. Just learn something during that time, and as you go up that spiral, you learn more and you learn it quicker. And finally, at some point you recognize the pattern, and then, pattern recognition is the first step to breaking a pattern. And so that's when we say, like you said, in the story, the idea was, you know what, we've been through so many times, so let's just enjoy the ride.
Right.
This is kind of nice water, this is it's not so bad. We don't have to panic. And at that point, the canoe floats above the water. And I think that's it, is part of it is not taking everything so seriously and recognizing that, we will get through it. And the other thing is that, in Judaism, there's a Hebrew word for reincarnation. You were talking about reincarnation, and I realized you're talking about it as a metaphor, but the word is Gilgul, which means wheel.
Oh my, okay.
Right? We're going around and around, like we're coming back around. I always joke because I was born Catholic and then I became a Christian and then I had an Orthodox Jewish conversion. I practice Buddhism and I'm a magician. I don't have to come back, I don't think. I'm just like going to do it all.
Just do it all in one.
Just going to do it all in this
Well,
way.
actually, she's inventing her own wheel. That's what's going on.
Yeah, this is what's happening. Yes.
Now I just need to get in that floating canoe for a while.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think it's true. I think if we would recognize that, and that's one of those things, the more we love ourselves, right? The more we love ourselves, the easier it is for everything to change. So instead of beating ourselves up and panicking over everything that's going wrong, because those two things are often connected. Why did I make that decision? Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. How could I have done that? Why are we here? Instead of just like, okay, you know what? Let's just take a moment to breathe and enjoy the ride. Notice that the water is really nice because we expect good things to happen.
Yeah.
Right? The expectation is important.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's we talk about that that thing where we don't belittle ourselves or berate ourselves for where we find ourselves back at the same time. And there's that saying, you can never enter the same river twice. You are never in the same experience twice. You are different. But when you know differently, the trick is to do differently. Because otherwise the knowledge is just academic, right?
Yes.
And so if you keep doing the same thing and the day you realize you keep doing the same thing and then you do it again, you're really making your own loop at that point. If you want to, so the recognition of the pattern and then doing something out of the pattern to change, it's like in your story, they're going, okay, well, we're not going to panic. We've decided we're going to just admire, let's just relax a little bit as much as we possibly can. And then we do that. And that's different. And then the pattern untangles a little bit. And then you do something and the pattern untangles. And suddenly you're out of it. And you can float. It's very cool. I love the story. I think it's a brilliant metaphor.
You know what else is? Sometimes it doesn't have to be some big, huge change.
Oh, no. Exactly.
Sometimes it's just a little bit of a change. Something slightly different in the way we perceive. I think perspective is the key here. It's not really always an action. It starts with a perception. And sometimes that's like saying, I tell the story, my very first coach, 2009, I was going through something really awful. And she could hear in my voice how distraught I was. And she was a fairly new coach, but she said something brilliant. She said, Cindy, what could I say to you right now that would make you feel better? And I said, I guess I just need somebody to tell me that everything's going to be all right. And she said, Cindy, everything's going to be all right. And that sounds so glib when I say it now. It's like, oh, but it really was what I needed. And who knew what I needed? I knew, like the client always knows, right? Exactly. And so she was, I think about that as a coach. That might not be, I have asked that question now, but I think if I hadn't had the experience, I might not be willing to ask my client, what can I say, right? Because I'm the coach. I'm supposed to know what to say. But she didn't know what to say, and she asked me. And that's what came out of my mouth. I just blurted it out. I just need somebody to tell me everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I felt this huge weight lifted off me because it was verbalized, right? Someone was telling me everything was going to be okay. And you know what? Everything was okay.
And there's always the side that what you resist persists. And when we go into oh my God, I'm so stupid, I keep doing this, it's like we're resisting this version of us that we found ourselves to be. And if you keep putting on your attention on the version of you that you don't want to be, you're going to live to prove that version of you over and over again. Whereas if you can treat yourself the way you would someone else that you love or something that you cherish, and you go, okay, yes, you're back here, but look at how things are changing. Look at how, because when in the 5 days of finishing stuff group that I was just the program that I was just running, somebody posted pictures and said she was so embarrassed by them, by the before pictures, right, of the work she'd done. And it was like, that's the key part, because if you are embarrassed by either who you are now, or you verbalize this, that you say you're embarrassed by who you are now, or the pictures that show who you've been, how how your room's been or whatever, that's so unsupportive of the version of you that got you to where you are now.
Yes.
Right? That's your previous self. And if you resist her, you're going to stay her or him. You're going to stay in the more. It's the same thing in your story. The more they resisted being in the river and going down the waterfall, the longer they stayed being on the river and going down the waterfall. When they stopped resisting, even if it was just like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to sit back and let the canoe go. Even before they started the appreciation part, that's the piece, the pattern recognition, like Cindy said, then the not surrender, but the acceptance of where we are, and then we can start to improve. But we cannot resist who we've been that got us to how we are now.
And it's attached to energy levels. Like Jackie, I know you've coached at least one client before, probably many, who want to argue for their limitations, right?
We do it. It's part of our humanness. Yes.
Right. And so, and that is a level of energy that's very low. It's a very catabolic level of energy. And so I can imagine the people in the boat that are saying, having all these reasons why it is going to happen. We are going to go over. We know we've done this before. And we know because we were too cheap to buy the bigger boat, right? We had to buy this little boat that's going to go over the side, right? And, all these reasons of all these things that we did, we knew we shouldn't have gotten in the boat in the middle of July. That's when it happened last time. Why are we doing this? So as a coach, like that's something that I am not going to let a client do, is argue for their limitations and say, but, right? And when I hear myself doing it, because I'm human and I do it too, right? And I'm married to a really brilliant man who calls me on my bullshit all the time. And if I try to argue for my limitations, he does not let me. So see, he's learned things from me, right? Because he lives with me, and now I have to live with myself, right? live with someone calling me out.
It's also part of the brain science thing, right? Your brain is a confirmation bias machine. So if it has decided that you are stupid for being in the boat, it will find you a bazillion reasons why you're stupid for being in the boat. Right. When you decide that you can be, when you consider being something else, if you consider hard enough, you don't even have to believe at that point, but if you consider with enough energy, your brain will go, oh, wait, okay, so you want evidence of how you're not that stupid. Well, remember that time that you learned your lesson before you got in the boat? Remember that? Well, we did that. And then it'll find all the other pieces, right? In the finishing group, I know it's fresh in my mind at the moment, but in the finishing group, one of the first things I did was point out to everybody how many times they finish stuff in a day. Because their focus is on everything they haven't finished. And I said, you finished breakfast, you finished lunch, you finished cleaning your teeth, you finished getting dressed, hopefully. It's like all of these things that you finish, but brains are very efficient. We don't learn to drive the car every time we get in it. So it glosses over these things until it needs something to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
And then it'll draw it out because your brain doesn't want change. It's that big paradox of the human brilliance. We have brains that are designed to keep us safe, preferably vertical. Doesn't give a shit how we feel. It just wants us safe, and change is not safe. So whatever changes, expect your brain to have an argument and expect it then to do its confirmation bias of this new thing that you want to believe.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And where attention goes, energy flows. So the minute you go, well, this is not, I don't have to make this as bad. I can look at this thing and I can look at that thing, or I can just look at how amazingly I'm coping. And, you know, if you happen to be at work and you haven't killed anybody yet, this is a good thing. You know, if you get to 5 p.m. and you haven't thrown your PC at your boss, this is a good thing. These are how you start noticing the things that are shifting your attention, so that you're not focused on, even if you just put some really sort of gothic humor on some things, even that can help, because it is enough to shift, to break the pattern and give you something else to think about, literally to think about.
And I think that, you know, a thing I noticed in myself years ago, and sometimes even still, and I notice it with a lot of other people, especially women, and especially women that are like the primary, you know, housekeepers and the cook and, you know, all the things they do, taking care of children, is that since those things get done automatically every day, we do the laundry, we cook the meal, we take the kids to school, whatever it is we're doing in those kind of, and many of them are things that are unpaid, unpaid labor type of things. They don't go on the calendar. Why? Well, because we do them automatically every day. So I don't schedule on my, or I actually do now, but I didn't schedule on my calendar, take the kids to school or cook lunch or whatever, because, well, that was just going to happen. So I would look at my calendar and I would actually say to someone, oh yeah, I don't have anything going on Thursday. Well, yeah, I did. I had a full day worth of stuff. It's just that and so I didn't count it. In the same way that I didn't get paid money for it, I didn't value it myself, and I didn't count it as being really worth anything.
Right.
And so what would happen was I'd be like, no, my calendar's completely, somebody would call me, hey, do you have any free days? I look at my calendar. Oh yeah. The only thing that went on my calendar is, you know, the kid had a dentist appointment, or I had a doctor appointment, or I had a meeting somewhere. Those went on the calendar. Everything else didn't, because it didn't really, in my mind, need to be. But then there was no value attached to it. So I remember one time after all of those jobs were over with and my kids were gone and everything, I was working for another coach before. Well, I had just been in coaching school, and I was working for another coach, and I was her VA, and I had actually flown to LA and was staying with her, and we were working together, and we had like done a bunch of huge projects and got all this stuff done. And then one day she said, oh, well, I guess I should go try to write something. And I haven't really done much for the last 3 days. And I think she was feeling haven't really done much because she finally had support, because I was there helping her, right? And she had been doing it all herself. But I said, are you kidding me? And I just rattled off the top of my head the 25 things we had done in the last 48 hours. And her eyes got big and she said, oh my gosh, wow, you're right. And it blew my mind. But I look back and I see how many times I do the same thing. I just don't count all these things that I do. And we all should take a look at everything we do, because so much of it, like Jackie said, you don't learn to drive the car every time you get in it. So once you've learned, then driving isn't really, you don't count that as an accomplishment. But think about the first time you drove anywhere all by yourself.
Especially a stick shift without stalling. That's a good thing.
I love it.
When I had a business partner, and we were working in a new lab that we had built back when I was in my 20s, and he traded in the company car for a different company car that was a stick shift. And I was in Menlo Park driving back to Alameda, which is a long drive in rush hour traffic. And he handed me the keys to the new car and said, oh, here's the keys to the new car. And I'd never driven a stick shift before.
Oh, fun.
So for like an hour and a half in rush hour traffic in California, by the time I got home, I was a mess, but I knew how to drive.
I'm sure you did.
Oh, fun. Yeah. My first driving experience here in the States, my husband got an appendicitis attack 2 months after we arrived. Fortunately, 3 weeks after our medical insurance kicked in.
That's a good thing. Yes.
Yes. And I had to drive from Minneapolis Hospital down south, if people know, Minneapolis Hospital down south to Apple Valley, on the wrong side of the road, I will just mention, because, hello, you people drive on a different side. It sounds so funny now because I've been here so long, but it was, okay, so the first time I drove, wrong side of the road, 5 p.m., on a 6-lane freeway.
Oh, what fun.
Yes. And I have this carbuncle on my finger from writing, and I kept rubbing it going, right side of the road, right side of the road. And then I said to the 2 kids at the back, because I had to take them with me. I'd left my husband at the hospital. And I said to them, don't talk to me. Just sit really quietly. I have to concentrate very hard. So we get home, we make it, we're intact. And I get out of the car and I said to the kids, thank you so much for being so quiet. And my daughter goes, we were praying, Mommy.
I love it.
That's the best story. Oh my God.
So their prayers helped to float the car on the right side of the road. And oh my Lord, it was so fun. Yeah, but these are the things, right? And it's so funny because I had been driving perfectly fine in South Africa on the other side of the road with a stick shift. And now I've got, okay, thank God we had an automatic, because I think if I'd have to worry about doing the stick shift as well, it would have been a disaster. But yeah, and just turning a corner, you don't think about it. It's like, okay, I want to turn left, but I got to go to the right-hand side of the road, and it's very complex, and my brain's going but it helps. It's a pattern interrupt. You definitely concentrate and you put your attention where it's supposed to be, which was, my attention was completely on getting home in one piece. Just this car needs to get to the house in the apartment in Apple Valley. That is it. And after, and the kids were thinking the same thing. Storming heaven, as my mother would say. And yeah, but yes, it is so interesting to see.
The kids were thinking, oh my God, we're gonna die.
But yeah, it is, it's those things that we can talk about afterwards and realize just how much we don't notice what we do. I've never noticed the driving until things change, and then I'm going, oh my God, okay, different, everything's different. Why is the indicator on this side of the road of the car? It took me forever to not get in on the passenger seat. I used to do this thing where I would open the passenger door and I'd start to get in and go, damn it, the steering wheel's not on the side. So I would put my handbag there like I always meant to, and then I would walk around with as much aplomb and dignity as I could possibly muster and sit myself down in the...
It was all planned. Yes,
absolutely. I really did want to do, they tell you in your driver's thing, you should do a circle of your car before you get in. Well, I did it so many times.
You did it very well.
And then you go back to South Africa and the whole thing starts again. It's like, where's the steering wheel? Somebody moved it.
I think it's we actually saw someone driving a car the other day, and they had the steering wheel on the other side. Yeah, here in town. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird.
It was a big deal in South Africa to have a left-hand drive car. Because if they did an import, then it was a left-hand drive car. And it was so weird. So weird.
It reminds me of...
I liked our conversation. I think we should all take time to look back like we're doing now, but to look back and realize how much you've accomplished in your life.
No kidding.
Right?
No kidding.
And how much you've got good at.
Yeah.
How much you've got good at. Humaning is not easy. And we do a lot of things at once that we do not give ourselves credit for. And it's very much something, again, energy, attention will increase. If you appreciate what you've already accomplished, you will accomplish more.
By the way, this all came off of one scenario that I laid out for these two life coaches. So anyone listening to the live stream, I mean, you look what you get out of you get a lot for your money, right? So if you have a question, throw it into the chat. I'll make sure it gets asked, and you can have the same experience. But in the meantime, I wanted to throw in one other little thing to kind of tag onto your story there, Jackie, because when Louise and I went to Barbados, this was many years ago, we were in Barbados. Barbados drives on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have some of the craziest drivers in the world. They have these little, the vehicles have different names in different places, like tuk-tuk and things like that.
No, rickshaws,
like these little, little tiny vehicles like that. It's a little bit longer than that, maybe like the size of a small family bus kind of a thing. And you get 12, 14 people on this thing, and they're driving you up and down the coastline there, and they're nuts. They're absolutely insane.
At ridiculous speeds, yes.
At ridiculous speeds, yeah. Going through intersections, it's amazing nobody dies in any of it. It's just they all somehow kind of make it all work. And I was talking about, well, we don't really want to ride that public transportation, but we want to get around. Why don't we just rent a car? And I was thinking that was going to be a fun experience. I could learn to drive on the left-hand side of the road. I'm sure I could handle that. And Louise was flipping out, like, absolutely not. That's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it just illustrates how you can have the same situation with two people who are very much compatible with each other, with two entirely different ways of looking at it and experiencing it and thinking about it and feeling about it. And look how, here's how it actually influenced our vacation. We didn't rent a car. We actually hired a taxi driver to take us around, and he was like our permanent driver for the rest of the time that we were there, which it was, by the way, a great experience.
And you survived, which is
which is a wonderful thing, by the way.
Yes, rather than ending up with somebody's speed bump. Yes. It's like my husband said he drove obviously for nearly 40 years in South Africa. So when we went back, he said, "Oh yeah, I'll drive." Well, my mother lives in a town. Well, it's pretending to be a town, but it's really a retirement home. Really, when you think about it, it's just like it's a very large retirement home. And we were driving with her, and she sails through a stoplight.
Oh, okay.
Not a stoplight, a stop sign. She slowed down a little bit, but she kind of just sailed through.
She slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, just a little. It's like cursory glances, and off she goes. And it's like, Mom, that's a stop sign. And she goes, "Oh, it's just for visitors. I know the traffic around here." That was when we decided not to drive. We would just.
I understand.
It's just safer not to.
Yes. there are some countries where traffic lights are suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Europe, it's sort of like the drivers in Europe are sort of like a school of fish. Like they drive intuitively, Yes. And the light may or may not mean anything. If they're going to stop, they all stop. But otherwise, they all cruise through. It's like, whoa. And driving on the Autobahn, that's an experience.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's no speed limit, right? Because we're used to something completely different. This is why when you buy cars that are made over there, they don't care about the cup holders, right?
No, not really.
Drinking coffee while they're driving like 130 miles an hour.
No.
Yeah, handling is everything. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny though. It's one common experience, and we're talking about how it unfolds in all these different places. It's like completely different.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it on autopilot if you're from one place and you go to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's true.
And the less on autopilot we are, the better, really.
Well, that raises another interesting question.
So much.
That raises another interesting question. This kind of ties into where I put together my little metaphor story in the first place, because I was asking myself a couple things. First, I was asking myself, how do we make changes in our lives to actually change our experience? What are the things we do? And I was kind of playing out those scenarios in my mind. The second thing that I was asking myself is, why is it that we stay repeating the same patterns over and over again? Because that in the story, it was they kept focusing on what they didn't like and didn't want. And that is the normal human experience. That's the way 99% of the population, maybe even 100%, depending on how you want to look at it, live their lives, where it's all about, what's the drama going on over here, the drama in the family, the drama on the screen, the drama in the theater. The drama is everything. Everywhere, everything. It's all about the drama. The newscast, it's the sports report. It's all the drama.
Because we're wired to keep ourselves safe.
Yes, yeah.
Which is odd.
That's the paradox, right? That we're designed to keep ourselves safe, but survival requires change.
And yet in the process of wanting to keep ourselves safe, we continue to keep ourselves safe by putting ourselves in danger.
Well, we don't need the amount of safekeeping that our brain was designed for. We don't need anymore. But there are a lot of things that we weren't designed for. Like we weren't designed for the internet.
No, we weren't designed for that amount of knowledge and availability of
activity and information.
And input.
Input, right. It's input overload. And so I think that we have adrenaline that happens on a level of being chased by a tiger when none of us are being chased by a tiger. And that causes us to, it's kind of like the vicious circle of being afraid of change because of the reaction that we have in the body. So much of it is somatic. So, we take small steps. That's why I said, we should celebrate even the small shifts. And sometimes the small shifts that we make in our behavior, the small little pattern interruptions pay really big dividends.
Yeah.
Have really big results.
But they have to be noticed because you have to put your attention on them for more energy to go there, which brings us back to that same loop, right? So
that's right.
It's how you interrupt a pattern is by noticing when you interrupt the pattern.
And then there's another phenomenon too, and I'm getting this one directly from the Thai boot camp that I'm going through right now. Now, you guys heard what happened after I had my initial stream session. I've been going through these modules that they have us do. I'm on module 5 now, and it's been quite the ride. It's been a little bit crazy at times. I mean, there have been a couple times where I was going right down to low vibe instantly. Like, whoa, what just happened here? And it was like being rocked all over the place and so forth. But working through it and progress has been good. But David made a point about something during the group meeting yesterday. Or was it during the group meeting? No, actually it was in a video. I can't remember what the source was, but it was he made this point very recently. He said that people go through the boot camp and the way you know that you graduated, well, first of all, you've completed all the modules and all the steps and so forth, but you've also achieved like this major breakthrough that you've been trying to achieve. That was the reason why you got into it in the first place. So that's how you know you're ready to graduate. He says a very interesting thing happens. We get people going through the boot camp. They're developing all these habits. They're working with them. They're making the changes in their lives. They succeed. They go through boot camp and then they start reverting back to the old patterns again because they stop doing the new behaviors. So I want you guys to comment on that a little bit because that's also a big part of not only the patterning, but the unlearning of the patterning.
Yeah, unlearning of a pattern because we revert back to what's easy.
Yeah.
The neural is that we don't have this program that we're in that's giving us assignments and holding us accountable. Right? So if you want to hire Jackie and me, we will keep you accountable to all the new behavior, right? Yeah.
Or being in a program, that kind of thing. It does do that.
It does.
But I refer to who you've been as a resume role. But the thing is that brain science will tell you that neural pathways never go away. And your brain is an efficiency machine, which is why we don't have to learn to drive the car again. So when you stop getting the stimulus that nudges you towards the new behavior, you're going to go back down that neural pathway that's 8 miles wide and a glass highway, right? You're going to go there because it's the least resistance. It's the easy way. It's the default. Until you can default to the one you're learning. And that takes so much more time than you think.
Practice. It takes practice.
Rehearsal, practice, everything. And reminding and keeping it front of mind so that your attention is on it. Like you have to concentrate on driving. When you're driving the first time, you have to concentrate. It's like, oh my God, I have to do the indicator and this and that. And everything has to happen at the same time. Until one day you get to work and you go, oh, I'm here already. How did I get here? Yeah, so it is that. And that's how change happens. But you will revert if you have not shifted your identity. In other words, have you become somebody that does this? Or are you still being somebody who's learning to do this? It's very different. And so it's that jump out of student mode into embodiment. So you're learning something, or you embody it, and then you can teach it, right? And sometimes embodiment and teaching can help each other. But student mode is a very different thing. It's like you'll say people, I keep trying to.
Yeah.
Right? I keep trying to do this or trying to that. Well, yeah, you are somebody who's trying. You're doing it really well, by the way. Kudos on being an accomplished trier. That's right. Right?
Well, I always say if you're going to do something, you might as well do it well. Yeah.
Right. Well, you may as well just do it. Just be somebody who's doing it. And again, we swing back to acknowledgement. Acknowledgement when you've done it, when you did it, when you were somebody who did that. It's like people talk about, I want to be rich, or I want to be skinny, or whatever it is. Well, they're still stuck in the person who's becoming that. They're not embodying somebody who is. And that's a very different way of thinking of things. It's like, they people in your canoe, they became somebody who wasn't worried about going over the edge.
That's right.
And consequently, didn't go over the edge.
They didn't go over the edge.
But they kept doing it too, right? So it's like, if you want to do something well, you often have to be willing to do it badly.
Oh, yeah.
Until you reach the point where you are mastering it, where you are doing it well.
Yeah, I call those the scenery, those times that you walk into the scenery. So, it happens. Or the door doesn't open. You're supposed to exit in a huff and the damn door doesn't open. We've all had those moments, but who you are when you're handling those moments is what you take with you.
I always thought it must be really miserable to be the guy who's manning the set who didn't do the right thing to make sure the door opened properly, and the actor's staring at him like, "What on earth did you do to ruin my scene?"
You are so dead. Yes. No, absolutely. It is. The backstage stories are always the best.
I'm sure they are.
Like the guy who got concussion because there's a bloody great red X on the floor underneath the weight that drops the fly. So they've got to do a counterbalance. Yeah. So there's this huge weight on a chain, and it comes down really fast as the fly disappears into the ceiling. There's a big X that says, "Do not stand here." So he's standing there.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, okay, all right. I suppose you had to do it once.
Yeah. Did he survive? That's the question.
He was fine. He just got a bump on his head. But
good.
It's like, okay, here we go. This is something that is something. He will not be, again, a person who stands on a red X.
No, probably not. No.
Yeah. That happens to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we learn something the hard way the first time and not going to have that happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not bad luck.
And it's not like the universe kind of snuck up on us, because the universe was getting us all kind of cues before that. Right. It's just that we got to the point where the only way we were listening was with the 2x4. And so the universe delivered the 2x4. But there was also the nudge on the shoulder and the kick in the knee. And there was all the other stuff that came before that. And we just kept ignoring it and ignoring it and ignoring it.
I always say this about relationships. There's only two kinds of red flags: the ones you see and the ones you ignore.
I like that. Yeah.
I love that. Yes, that's very true. And it's interesting when you think about the people going over the waterfall. It's like, okay, in your story, it was lifetimes. And, we can talk about how lifetimes you get that sort of amnesia in between because it's necessary. But if you're going to there are those among us who learn things the first time. It's like they'll have an experience and they'll go, okay, here's what I gleaned from this. I'm not going to do that again. And there are other people who kind of have to keep getting into the same mess often to learn that same lesson. And I think it'd be really cool if most of us, but then I do think that that's part of the evolution of humanity, is that we learn faster because more people have made the same mistake.
Well, that's an interesting point. And I want to amplify that in the last 4 or 5 minutes that we've got left. If we could actually do a show on this one, but we'll limit it down. And that is the idea of, it gets expressed a lot of different ways. I'll call it community knowledge, where one person or a group of people learn something and suddenly everybody in the next generation have learned it.
It's the quantum field, yes.
The quantum field, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why my 2-year-old grandbaby can pick up an Apple tablet and go, and she knows how to swipe left, she knows where the finger goes, she knows how to choose a show, and it's like, really? You can't even put a complete sentence together yet, and you're using this piece of machinery. It just blows my mind. But yeah, it is. The quantum knowledge is how it's a fabulous thing to play with.
So it raises another interesting question. We have, as you ladies both indicated earlier on in the various commentaries you were making, that we have a limited mind. We have a limited brain. It can only do so much. And yet look what we're able to do in order to compensate for that. Mm-hmm. Generationally, we're able to pass stuff along so that even though the brain can only focus on one particular thing at a time, it still manages to have all this other knowledge right at the fingertips to do with as it needs to.
I don't know that we have a limited brain, but I do think that that our attention on things we only have so much capacity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think most of us are amazed at what we can accomplish if we just believe we can.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
That's the key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the key.
That's something also that I've been experiencing in the boot camp. We're at a point now where at module 5, you have a pretty good idea of what the lay of the land is. I mean, you've been through the major steps, and the major steps are essentially you practice meditation, you practice journaling, you tie those together, and then you're doing a thing that they call a quick rise, or I can't remember what they call it. Basically, a quick way of getting up into a high vibration state when you're in a low vibration state. By the way, that's the tool I love best, the one that they gave us for that. In fact, they just added a module, or maybe it's a sub-module on how to do that one. And it's so breathtakingly simple when you think about it. All they're really suggesting is you do a 3-step method. The first step being you do something really, really simple, low thought, ironing, doing the dishes, driving the car, something that doesn't require a lot of attention, just to kind of get yourself off of that really negative space that you're in for a bit. And then on top of that, after you've done that for a bit, then you do like 3 to 5 appreciations about stuff, so that you can kind of take that walking up the steps of the Abraham Hicks scale, so to speak. And then after you've done the 3 appreciations or 5 appreciations, then you do a meditation on top of that. In other words, you do a series of these things. And if you do that, you'll rise right up to the high vibration. And what I found so far, I don't have to get to the meditation. I mean, I'm up there after the 2nd step. So I'm thinking, wow, what happens if I ever get really depressed? I'll bet you I can bounce right up. I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I love that. Cool. To have a tool like that one. So that's been my best takeaway so far. But I mean, that basically lays out what we're doing. We're learning how to do a quick rise up the vibrational spiral. We're getting into the meditative practice on a regular basis. We're journaling about it. And then the big takeaway I had from today's module 5 was not only do you do those things, but you're also doing your dreaming when you're at the high end of the vibrational scale, which is not the way I often had done it in the past. I would dream, I would try to create my ideal dream state when I'm feeling depressed, which doesn't work real well. And you end up producing this stuff that you don't really want to have. And I hadn't thought about that. Wow, why do we do that? But you're right. Thank you for that piece of information, because I really do need to do the dreaming when I'm in the high vibrational state.
I love the first step too. I often encourage people to do that. Look, move. Just move. Get out of the chair, go for a walk, go do something, like you said, go wash the dishes, go do something that you're not having to, but you're shifting energy because you're getting up and going to do something else. And that's a nice first step before you go into those appreciations, because it doesn't require you to suddenly be happy when you're feeling terrible, right? It's like a nice, smooth entry point. Yeah, that's great.
It's really good.
Yeah, dance breaks. Those are my go-tos.
Yes.
Put something on. At the moment, I'm kind of hooked on Tijuana Brass.
Okay.
Get me moving in no time at all.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. Herb Alpert does not fail on that score. No,
he doesn't. Yes.
Well, this has been fun. I'm glad you enjoyed my little metaphor story.
Fabulous story.
Yeah. I love it too. It's great.
Yeah, that was fun. I had fun dreaming it up too. It's actually encouraging me. Maybe I'll come up with some more like that. Something to do in the future.
Yeah. Or make a video game. And
there's an interesting
It sounded like a video game initially, and it's like, wow. And then I loved the whole metaphor. I just thought it was brilliant. Yes, really, really good.
Well, thank you very much. Now I feel really, really. I was on a high vibe now. I'm even a higher vibe than I was before. This is great. So, ladies, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you, especially to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Bye.